It's interesting too. Yep, there it is. So, I mean, of course, people know me that I wear jeans and a black T-shirt almost every day, but it seems like that's your thing too now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where once we started doing this, trying to wear the same thing just so you don't date yourself in terms of the different seasons and winter versus summer. So I started wearing this SpaceX T-shirt, and then strangely enough, I don't. It seems like they launch so often now that it was like I feel as if I wear my SpaceX T-shirt, then I can contribute to a successful launch.
It does seem like every day now, which is cool.
Yeah, and so now it just seems this is my T-shirt I wear.
As not a big space guy, that's me. But I've seen some of the stuff going on. It seems like the 60s, 70s, 80s, like space stuff was huge. 25, 30 years go away. It's not huge for whatever reason. I'm not exactly sure. And then Red Bull gets associated. Tesla, Elon gets associated with stuff. And it seems like it's making a comeback tour. Is that a fair assessment, or am I just
and I think that a lot of it boils down to the fact that after all the unfortunate events with the space shuttle program, then that kind of shut everything down for a little while. And then budgetary constraints shut everything down even further. And so now you got people like Elon and Jeff Bezos that are leading the charge to bring everything back up.
And you might be listening. You might be listening, thinking, "How are they going to transition from what they're talking about now to that?" But me, the big J school kind of guy, I know how to do it. So you look at industry. Oh, you want to do it?
Well, no, I was going to say if you're missing a transition, I have one because.
Okay, well you can do it.
No, I just as a guy, we reference this a lot. I'm an Elon fan. I drive a Tesla. I'm Tesla through and through. And then when it's crazy that driving a Model 3 now for almost 4 years, people still will ask me, "Hey, how's that Tesla working out for you? Have any problems with it?" And the answer is always like, "Nope, still don't." But it's crazy to believe that it's been 4 years. But one of the things that I tell everybody, once you're in a Tesla, and then if you go back to a gas-powered vehicle, it's like going back and driving a horse. And that would be my transition to
it's good.
To Tori, our guest today from BarnWiz. So welcome to the show.
I was going to say something like how technology doesn't always progress at the speed that you want, and sometimes someone has to lead the charge, which brings on Tori to lead the charge in this world. But I think Tim's was way better, so we're going to go with his.
I mean, it is wild.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. And yeah, horses have really taken the transition from non-electronic world to a complete digital platform. So,
and if you think about it from a vehicle perspective, we do speak in horsepower, which I'm assuming is horses. Why do you know why that's the data point that they use to collect? How did that whole thing, in either of you, like that?
Maybe it's the double horses carriage for pounds. Who knows? I don't know that. That's
I would assume that it was like you said, Tori, that you went from one horse to 2 to 4, and then as that continued to build on that. But it's curious though. How do you make that calculation? I'm sure there is some sort of.
Is your vehicle, Tim, based in horsepower still?
Yeah, I can't remember what it is though. But it's and it's more like torque is really what it's known for, and I don't know. It's fast.
The Plaid model boasts a third electric motor, which boosts combined output to 1,020 horsepower. That's a lot.
That's a lot of horses.
Wow.
That's a whole herd for sure. That's why keeps the horse in their thought of using it for entertainment and for legitimate work.
Wow.
I mean, that's interesting in the sense of, from the training aspect, I think that the horse industry is probably grown exponentially, but yet you identified a need where it's still very antiquated. So tell us a little bit about the problem that you identified, what BarnWiz is, and what problem that you're solving.
Sure. So my background is really I grew up with horses. I rode them. We bred them. I lived out west, so we had the opportunity to ride both Western and English. And then went through college, came to the real world of work, and found I was on the East Coast with no idea where I could board my horse, who the good trainers were, where I could even find tack or equipment for my horse. So I felt like this is odd. And what happens in many sports, I think, is word of mouth is what's used to attract a new client to a business. And so the horse industry used word of mouth. And over years and years of being in the software industry, I worked my career in healthcare, implementing technology in hospitals. I then said, wait a minute, why are we depending on word of mouth in the digital age? And thought there's got to be a better way, and set out to really help modernize the industry.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking to see. I saw some muting of the mics going on. So in terms of like, how is industry being done? How is that handled now? Is that's still very much paper, clipboard, Excel spreadsheet, and that's one of the things that you're modernizing?
It is slowly modernizing for sure. There are certainly online magazines, and there's Facebook, social media posts, and Instagram. There's online, the industry depends on associations for competitions. And so those have become much more digital in their ability to reach their audience. But when it comes to actually finding local resources, people depend on word of mouth, asking a friend, looking in social media groups, looking in local tack stores or other feed stores for a paper post that somebody may have as an advertisement, or local magazines that are very regionalized to what's available in that area. And all those things are helpful once you use word of mouth. And so I believe that word of mouth is so strong in many, talk to any friends, where to eat, where to stay.
What to watch on Netflix.
Word of mouth is such a strong, yeah, exactly. It's such a strong tool. So I don't believe that we'll ever eliminate word of mouth, but I think word of mouth alone takes a really long time, especially a long time to grow a business. And so what I really set out to do is to speed up word of mouth and then qualify word of mouth. And I relate it to sort of the horse industry, I think, is a little like the Food and Drug Administration before there was a Food and Drug Administration. So meals were, food was set out in markets, and it was tainted, right? Because there wasn't standards for how hot should it be kept or how should it be cooked. And it caused real health problems for people. And so I sort of correlation between that lack of standards, or I won't say that there's no standards in the industry, because there certainly are standards for competitions and for any of the sport side of it and any of the betting or any of that piece of it. Even some states have standards for the care of the horse. But overall, there aren't clear standards for training or for overall care. And like you would say, a hotel, for example, has a rating of 1 to 5 stars, and what to experience if you're staying at a 1-star hotel versus a 5-star hotel. And so I think that there's a real opportunity to use the existing mechanisms for credentialing or for rating barns that exist today, and cultivate that to be a broader standard for the whole industry.
So this is a silly question, But I have to ask, did you watch Yellowstone?
Yeah.
And it's just so like, how much of that is like reality? I mean, it was like you look at like when they had to haul the horses from Texas to Montana, or
Hey,
Montana
don't ruin
to
it for me,
Texas.
Tim. I'm only on episode 4.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like these trailers that they were driving in. I mean, like these haulers were like really, really nice. And then when you talk about the expense of that industry, I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, this is not just, nickel and dime stuff. I mean, this is large, big money here. Is that true in reality?
In reality, I think, of course, what's seen are professionals in the industry, and so they're going to have the highest value to what they're trying to win, and what they're spending in order to take the horses from places. And so I think the reality is, though, however, there's a huge variety to what how you can enter into the industry. Horses, first of all, they are used for many things. Sport is one of them. Horses are still used in Amish country for farming and for going around. You can go into Pennsylvania and you'll see horse-drawn carriages to this day. They are also used for therapeutic modalities. In other words, people are using them for mental health, PTSD, anxiety, relationship building when there's been real trauma events, and reasons regarding physical ailments, because horses really teach core balance, and they also are quite a diverse, animal in terms of they sense a heartbeat, from 10 feet away. They sense emotions. They read emotions very easily, and they have a memory, unlike dogs, that can, if in a healthy state, are always friendly and happy to see you. Horses can have a memory if there's been something that's been traumatic or uneasy for them, that can really alter how they perceive one individual versus another individual. And so I think they're a really complex animal, and I think the opportunity is to let more people understand them. I mean, today there's probably 1 in 6 somehow have some interaction with a horse, and I actually think that everyone should be able to interact with a horse, for nothing else but for mental therapy and mental health. We joke in the barn, this is your therapy. Your horse is your therapy, because they really do react to your energy.
That's interesting. So what's the vision on BarnWiz? What's the elevator pitch? So if you and I are just meeting for the first time, like, give me the breakdown of what is BarnWiz.
So BarnWiz is an online platform to find and book horse activities, lessons, boarding, training in one place on your app, in a phone.
And when you're putting that together, that kind of using that vernacular, using that kind of pitch, if you will, and really just developing the platform, how do you recognize, okay, this is what I should be doing now versus maybe this is where it'll be in the future? Like, how did you come up with those 2 or 3 things that you decided that's how we're going to recruit kind of the early stage customers of BarnWiz?
Well, early on in developing BarnWiz, from my vision of it, just want a digital way to find a trainer that's qualified. I participated in the Virginia ICAP program, which I'm sure you guys are well familiar with and talk about it. And so that really taught me and our team, how to go and validate ideas that we think are important to how we build out our roadmap from a technology perspective. And so we have instilled that energy, that reasoning into how we map our roadmap. So every idea, we will go and we will talk to people in the industry. We'll go into tack stores, we'll go into feed stores, we'll go to horse shows, and we'll just have a hypothesis of, for example, people are going to use Google to find a new trainer, and we'll say that's number one. Number two is going to be phone a friend, and number three maybe is going to be a horse show, seeing results. And then we'll go out and we'll just generally ask, how do you find a trainer? What are the steps you take? And people will tell us the first thing they do. And what was amazing in learning this tool, and I'm so grateful we did, is our hypothesis is mostly close to the answer that the customer and that wants and how they validate what they would use, but it's almost always slightly off. And I think that's a really important concept. You don't know everything, and your customer doesn't always know everything either. But I think the combination between the two really help. And so where we see that roadmap, we are committed to validating it with our audience.
How do you validate that to ensure that the customer will be able to become a user, become someone that actually pays the business and not just someone who says something, right? And so the example I'll give is, way back when, actually, I just tweeted about this a couple of days ago. In 2013, I was thinking about writing a book, and I paid $5 for a cover on Fiverr. And it was like the things that I've done from a marketing perspective to make for $5 or less or something like that. And the whole thing was, if I can sell an amount of copies that I feel is worth it, I will write the book. I sold one copy, so I didn't write the book. Now, technically, I wrote the book probably 5 years later when I had sold a lot more copies with a different name and a little bit more strategy behind that. But how do you validate that what people are telling you is actually going to be valuable for your business and not just chitter chatter?
So I also think it's important to get early adopters committed to signing up to use your platform. And so that's, we don't just generally ask questions. We engage with people. We start, well, would you be interested if we created this? And would you be willing to pay at this price? And are you interested in being an early adopter? And so I think, and Zack, to your point, I mean, nothing tells you more than a paying customer.
What was it difficult for you to get out and start asking those first people questions? I mean, well, what I have seen is that so many founders they're just deathly afraid,
terrified
to talk to potential users because what if they tell me that I'm not solving the problem, or that they're not interested,
or their baby's ugly,
right? Was that difficult for you? And if so, how did you get past it?
I mean, I think the good thing about my background is that I've spent 20 years installing healthcare tools, and a lot of that job was consultative work. And so I'm very used to people pushing back on technology or, ideas. And so I have that going for me, where I sort of maybe have a little bit of a thicker armor in being willing to talk to people. But second of all, this is the industry I love and I know a lot about. And so it's like, well, how do you run it? And I'm genuinely curious about how they run their business or how they operate. And I think that probably helps. I find people, it's like dog people, they're just like, oh, you're a horse person. Okay. And they're willing to share. And so, I think that came a little bit more naturally to me, and than maybe other people that are entering a market that they really are guessing is a good market but haven't been in before.
You talked about thick skin, and I think it's interesting of that. So I've recently started running. Tim is a big time runner, and I'm constantly looking at feedback. I know that I'm terrible. Right. And so it's like I go into the process of that wanting more, right, where I'm sharing this, and I'll share it with Tim. Right. So I'll send him like this run. Hey, I just went on this run. I did this. This is my speed. This is how I looked. This is how I felt. And I'm openly asking for that feedback. Do you feel like it sounds like that's similar in this case, where you're openly wanting that feedback? You are very passionate about it, and because of that, that's allowing you to actually get a better result out of it. Are we kind of on the same page there, you think?
I think so, definitely. I mean, I know enough about software that it's never done, right? So, and it always changes. And so I think,
You'd be surprised at how many people don't think that.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that I have a software background, right? So, creating these software, and my job started before Y2K. So my job was to take hospitals from a paper system to an electronic system. And what that meant is I had to standardize or help them standardize all the documentation. And it's very much like, trying to standardize the horse industry, actually. Right. So, and there was a ton of pushback, and you're talking about pushback from doctors and people that absolutely believe in the way they're doing it is the right way, and that they shouldn't change their operative report because it has exactly the right information in it, and the way that it's laid out is exactly right. And unfortunately, there was 15 of them in a hospital, and you can only have one. And so So there's definitely things I learned very young in my career of negotiating and navigating, people's opinions to help the collective standard.
Well, there could be more than one right answer for something.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've always loved meeting founders with sales type of backgrounds because they're not afraid of that no. It's like, hey, the sooner we get to know, the sooner I can move on to the next potential customer. And I love that aspect. And so many founders are not that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're too tied to it. They get emotionally tied to it. And it's like, hey, like this, you're building this thing. Yes, you're doing it for a plethora of different reasons, but the people who are acquiring this, people who are buying it, the people who are using it are the ones that you need to get those answers for. And you might have to massage and shift your mindset and thoughts on that to make it succeed.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about this. I've been involved with 1 Million Cups locally for years, and I see a lot of founders come through 1 Million Cups, and I really believe that there's an emotional evolution to owning a business. And early on, I think founders in that immature state are very closed to new ideas, know what they have, are very interested in closing off who knows about it. It's secretive. They don't want it to get out. It could get stolen. They're very worried about it. And I think as you emotionally mature, you realize how hard it is to build a business and how it really, you want everybody's ideas, because one idea, and I keep saying, I'm going to write a book about the emotional evolution that founders have to go through, because I truly believe there is something to it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, and Zach, you feel free to share your thoughts, but it's totally counterintuitive. So much of business is counterintuitive, just in terms of, like, to your point, Tori, you can tell everybody your idea, but it's like, unless they have someone else has the same passion, the same background, the same, just desire to solve that problem, no one is going to be able to do it and do it better than you are. Just in terms of, like, not every customer is the ideal customer for you. You really have to narrow down and segment and identify who your true customer is, because otherwise then you're going to have a customer or a client that doesn't fit your business, and then you're going to be spending 80% of your time on a customer that you shouldn't have taken on to begin with. So there's just so many aspects that I find it completely counterintuitive.
So I wrote down 3 things as to why I think this is the case of why it is. Okay. And that case being people being immature of not knowing what their business really is, and just to piggyback off what you said, and I agree, Tim. Number 1 is business schools. I feel like business schools are usually historically outdated. A lot of those people have never actually run a business. They are more managers and MBAs of businesses, which are important things, but they're a very different thing in my mind. Like, people will get mad at Elon Musk, who will say something because he doesn't. Does he have a business degree? Does he have an MBA? He had said something at some point, Tim, and people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said that." Well, he's one of the most brilliant minds in the world. It's like, come on, you got to respect that. So business schools, I feel like there's a lot of education taught around stuff where it's not actually getting your hands dirty. And I think you have to get your hands dirty to actually see what's going to happen in that world. Number two is Hollywood. I think Hollywood has pushed some of this narrative to make it seem like, oh, this is the way that it's supposed to be. You know, you could say the Facebook movie. Who knows how much of that is actually true, and who really cares? Because it's very difficult to become, you know, what, a $50 billion business. Most businesses don't want to be a $50 billion business. And number three is you hear the word of mouth, this people watching Shark Tank, all that kind of stuff of non-business owners getting into the narrative saying, oh, you should do this. Well, you've never done that yourself. So you have to be careful in there. And the last example I'll give is just people saying, oh, well, what about your competition? You really almost never need to worry about your competition, in my opinion, right? Some of the biggest businesses in the world literally will just go across the street from someone else and say, hey, cool. Like, we actually realized that when there's a Burger King, a McDonald's, and a Wendy's across the street from each other, all of us are going to do well. Why are Rite Aid and Walgreens on the opposite corners of each other? Because they realize that density is important. Yet, if we really push the competition word, you would never think that density of businesses that are similar to each other is important. Yet, look at a shopping mall, look at the internet. Like these are all things where a collection of businesses that are all quote unquote competition, you would think in theory is the wrong thing, where actually it's the reason why more businesses succeed. And so I think when you kind of put all that together into a run-on sentence like I'm doing right now, I think you realize why people have that kind of opinion of whatever got this whole thing started.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, but it's interesting in the sense of, and a lot of it comes down to speed, and you're able to react to the market. And it's interesting, and it's not necessarily a dig at business schools and universities, but I mean, it's funny talking to people within the education industry, and they just talk about how slow they move. And I mean, it's one of the biggest pain points that business schools have is just they're so slow.
Well,
so
and
it's so
and they never talk about like how to actually, like, you know, do an actual task. They just talk about it in theory. And
well, right, yeah.
How that's why I think she's been so successful in the sales aspect of it, because she knows how to talk.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just like, if it's super slow just to hire someone or change the curriculum, I mean, it just, I mean, therefore, like, one of the big things at business school, I mean, they teach, you know, outsourcing everything, just in time, supply chains and everything else. Whereas then you got someone like Elon that comes in and says, no, we're going to vertically integrate everything and do everything in-house. And everyone was like, my gosh, this dude is like set up for failure. He's totally going against the grain on everything. And now we're like in this supply chain crisis that we have, and Tesla's vertically integrated. And they're the only car manufacturer right now that's producing anything. And because they're vertically integrated, and they've just completely changed the landscape. I mean, it's just, it's wild. It's wild to think.
I think most people are afraid to ask why. Like, why do we do it this way? Why do we have to do it that way? What happens if we do it some way different? And I worked for IBM for 9 years, and that was such an interesting company to work for, because they were like working for the government. So, they really didn't want to change it. It's really hard for someone like me that wants to move fast and wants to do something to try to get them to move, because it was a committee decision. And I think, fortunately, I have parents that have been entrepreneurs and grandparents that have been entrepreneurs. So it's sort of this legacy of entrepreneurs that I've lived with. And so speed was always what they needed, right? If something wasn't selling at a trade show, literally in real time, have to redo their booth so that it's more attractive visually, and so that it sells more. And so little things like that, I think, really have helped me understand how to just keep asking questions, not just of, are we selling the right thing, but is this the right way to approach the product for the industry? And I just think it's so important to stay connected to your customer, because they're the one that is always making the decision and is always spreading the word about your product and about what you're doing. And I think referrals are, to your $5 marketing point, Zach, the referrals are so strong.
Yeah, and to circle back around before we get too far away from it, I mean, I always recommend to a lot of founders, almost all founders that I meet, your 1 million cups is just what a great place to introduce your idea and get some validation. I mean, you're in a super non-threatening audience that people truly want to help you and give you great feedback, and they're not going to laugh you off stage, but go there, take your 7 minutes, share your idea, and those are the first 20, 30, 40 people, however many people are in the audience, that are going to give you customer feedback, so to speak. So that's a great place to start.
And it's good practice.
Yeah, it is. But I think the great thing about 1 Million Cups is it's a mentor, sort of like this mentoring platform every Wednesday morning at 9 in your local city, where it is a very friendly entrepreneurial, audience. And so I don't think enough people early on know about it and know the value of it for sure. And I think you're right. It's such a good tool to validate where they're going, and then there's not a need to share business cards in the sense of spreading leads. It's really a tool to help solve.
You back?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if my internet's going in and out, but anyway. So yeah, it's really a great tool for business challenges.
Sure. I feel like a lot of people, maybe first-time business owners, first-time entrepreneurs, have this thought, whether it's them or just the general public around them, that if you're a business owner, you're successful, you're very wealthy, and things like that. And maybe that's why they don't jump on things like that, because they don't actually see the value yet, because they haven't experienced how difficult it is to make your first sale, your 10th sale, your 100th sale, something like that. And so it's interesting. You articulated a way that made me think, oh, well, I guess people just think that if you own a business, you're super successful, but the data definitely proves that wrong. So just words of, well, just a thought for me. So this is your first business, BarnWiz, but you come from a family, a legacy of people who have been in business before. Do you think that helped kind of steer you in the direction of doing this, or what made you kind of realize that this was the road for you?
I'm sure it did, right? I mean, I grew up with a family that only talked business at our dinner table. I mean, I'm not sure how many people have that experience, but it was always solving business challenges. So
not me.
Relate to 1 Million Cups as my nightly dinner table because there was always my parents started their company when I was in middle school, and so from a pretty young age we were always solving problems of the business. And they're a retail shop, and retail has had ups and downs, since the 80s. And I think that really did help me understand it's not just going to launch and be successful, even though I really wish that had happened. I think the reality was things take time, and it's good. You're much more stable in that process.
Well, it's interesting you brought up a real interesting point that it's easy to overlook, in the sense of, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I mean, that's the stuff that you talk about at the dinner table. It's not like you just punch your time card and then you don't think about it again until you punch back in the morning. I mean, it's just, you've got to own it. You've got to eat, sleep, breathe, and constantly work on that business to improve it. And that's not always, it's not the game for everyone to play. So the sooner that you can figure out, hey, is this something that is in my DNA, or do I want a 9-to-5? There's nothing wrong with either, but you need to determine, this is who I am as a person, and this is what I'm going to go after. So for you, I mean, that was just always part of your life. So it's an easy decision to make, that it's like, hey, I'm willing to put in the time and work as many hours as I need to solve the problem that I'm setting out to solve.
There has to be that push for me anyways. It was really IBM saying, our roles were being disbanded and we were going to be moved to another division that I didn't believe in. And I've learned about myself, if I don't believe in something, I really can't sell it well. And so it was an opportunity to just fully engage in BarnWiz. And I think eventually I would have done that anyway, but maybe not at that exact moment. And so I think I've heard other people talk about, how things happen in your life that push you into, a position that you have no other choice but to, start a business or move or whatever. And that ends up being the best thing that ever happened to you. And I think that's sort of that situation happened for me.
Are you technical? As in the website, did you develop? Did you hire someone to do it? How does the process of that go down?
Yeah. So I would say I'm technical in the way that I understand how we need to create it and how the be utilized, but I'm not a developer. And so I do hire developers. In fact, I'm recruiting for a full stack engineer right now. If you know of anybody that's looking and interested in our project, love to talk to them. But yeah, I think I'm much better at a bigger vision. And, I think that's where I'm a better use of our communal talents is to help me, share the bigger vision, sales, and, fundraising and that kind of stuff that we need to do.
A lot of non-technical founders have challenges with finding talent, understanding the process and things like that. Are there any tips that you've gone through that have been pretty helpful in that scenario?
Surround yourself with the smartest engineers that you can, even if they work for someone else. I mean, I think it's knowledge is power, and so I feel very fortunate to have friends that are engineers, and I can ask, who should I look for, and can you help vet people, and can you help network and help me find resources, and so that I talk with people about how do they find engineers and how do you, learn from what's the latest process. Because I think the other part about being sort of that engineer, that non-technical resource, the benefit is you're not stuck with certain technologies that you are comfortable using. And so I think that's other benefit of if you're just technical enough to learn some technologies and you're open to having conversations with how are people building things, how are people, because technology is moving so fast. And so I think it's a opportunity to ask anyone that's hiring or anybody that's, has teams that are building tools. What are you using? How do you solve this problem? Even if you already know how you're going to solve it, I think it's an opportunity to learn about how others are solving it and take advantage of an opportunity to maybe use that tool yourself.
How did you go about growing your team? I mean, one of the things that you talked about was the fact that, hey, my time is best spent doing something else. So talk about your team, who's on your team, and how did you go about building that team?
I feel really fortunate, and people sort of have come to me through networking, I guess, just knowing people. I have people that help in marketing that have just aligned with me from other friends, people that help with sort of the operation side of it that I've met through the horse industry, and on the finance side, just really through networking mostly. And so I'm a big proponent of meeting people and always talking about, if I see any talent in anyone, one of the people that it has helped us is someone that I met just randomly. I was working as a clerk in a tax shop, and he came in, and we just started talking. And so I think, I just start. If I see something in someone or just start a conversation, it ironically does lead a lot of times to, people that I enjoy working with.
And the financial aspect of that, bootstrapped? Have you raised money? How is that going?
So we bootstrapped up until last September. We closed the $250,000 friends and family round. And so that really helped us create sort of our next wireframe and sort of what technology would we add to the platform to grow it, and also enables us to hire an engineer.
What was that process like of raising? I think so many people are timid to maybe even to bootstrap, to then ask friends and family to get $250,000. What was that process like for you?
I think it's, fundraising is a process, right? So I think there's a lot of work to prepare for it. And I read a lot. I went through accelerator, everyone. And, you guys mentioned earlier, founders not, being willing to hear no. I think fundraising is, the biggest no you'll ever hear. And all you can do is just keep talking to people and keep believing. And so for me, I just had to keep talking and keep asking and keep, sharing what we're doing. And I think that never ends. So,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just, like the whole sales thing, always be closing. And I mean, the fundraising process is also a never ending process as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you just finished an accelerator program. Is that right?
I did. Yeah. I ended up going down to Tampa Bay Wave. It's an accelerator in Tampa Bay, Florida. It was sort of an intention, I'll say, to go there because there's a lot of activity in Tampa right now regarding startups and fundraising. And also this program was a specific program for women in tech. Good initiative, and Florida is a really important state for horses, and just a lot is going on within that state. And so it was like all stars aligned and the perfect opportunity to participate in an accelerator that fit where I was as a business. And I think that's an important part because I think there's lots of accelerators out there now, and I think they're helping companies at all different levels. And I think it's really important to find one that fits your level and fits in what you're trying to do with your business. For me, I was really trying to cultivate the messaging of what my business was doing and articulate the right message for investors. And I think so my intention in joining that accelerator program was specifically to help mature my messaging to target investors.
Yes. Okay. So there's a ton of accelerators. I started the state's first accelerator back in 2012, called Hatch. And a lot has popped up since then, probably, I don't know how many in the state of Virginia alone. I don't know how many in the country. There's a lot. Right. Yeah. So as you're going through, how do you decide, how do you navigate, I should do this instead of just maybe hiring a branding company to help you kind of formulate that information? How did you come to the conclusion that an accelerator was that instead of maybe your traditional branding company or something like that?
So, I think maybe it's helpful that I'm not a super young founder, that I've been in business a while, and I knew enough about growing a company that branding wasn't going to be enough if I didn't have the right message to my ultimate consumer, which for this purpose of fundraising is an investor. And the reality is that, while my family is entrepreneurs, they were, bootstrapping in their retail shops. They're not trying to build a, digital platform that wide platform. And so I knew going into this, I needed to fundraise. I knew going into this, I needed to learn how to, I needed to change, but I didn't exactly know what that looked like. And so when I started talking to accelerator programs, I had a very clear understanding of what I needed to get out of it. And it's easy if I think if you know what you want to get out of it, it's easy to ask questions of the accelerator program, what they offer. And what you're going to learn and how long is that going to take and how much interaction is it and how much mentoring. And, I think the reality is there's so many accelerated programs now that if you're just trying to, swing a cat around, you're going to hit 10 of them, but maybe one is going to be helpful. And so I think the best thing that a founder themselves can do is say, what's in it for me when you're going to an accelerator program?
That's very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost to the point now where there's so many accelerators that you've got founders that will just try going from accelerator to accelerator to accelerator. And at some point, especially if you want to try to raise money, that it's like, what have you done other than go to 3 different accelerators? Where are you at with the product? How many customers do you have?
You think they're just buying time at that point?
Well, right. And that's just it. I mean, it's almost to the point. I mean, it is to the point where you're starting to discredit yourself as a founder and as a business if all you do is just go from accelerator to accelerator.
Well, I remember Vinyl Mint did that way back when, they went through, they were a company that they went through Start Norfolk, they went through Hatch, they raised a little money with us, then they kept going to all these other places. And it's like, hello, like none of these things are really moving the needle the way that they need to. And no, I mean it's interesting. And obviously they're not I don't think they're in business anymore. I mean, I would know.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, I think if it's not growing your company, I really question, like, why are you here? And we've gone through pitch events and gone through startup. We were just down at Startup of the Year, and so I think there's all kinds of events everywhere. You can absolutely have an opportunity to do a accelerator program, a pitch event, whatever in cycle. But I really believe you have to take a stance to say, what am I going to get out of this? How is it going to actually grow the business?
Were you looking at it as like a single statement, like I need this one specific thing, and that's that? And so, what was that sentence?
The sentence was I need a verbiage, like I need a script that will attract the investors that I need. And so we had a PowerPoint, of course, we had our pitch, but the story that I was telling, I needed to articulate in a way that was compelling to an audience that might not know anything about horses.
Did you get that out of the accelerator?
I think it helped me 90% evolve there. I mean, I think no accelerator will do everything. I think accelerators help you evolve. And so I think I just keep asking, and it's probably never going to finish the evolution of how I talk about it slightly. But I think overall, it really helped me cultivate that. Here's the message, and here's how to, bring it into a 3-minute sentence.
What was the other? What was the unexpected win, if you will, that you got out of going to the accelerator that you didn't expect to gain?
I didn't really think about relationships that I would build in a program that was only 3 months long, and it was only meeting, 1 week a month. I mean, I think that was wonderful and surprising about real, true friends that are business entrepreneurs. I mean, the reality of being in this industry, being an entrepreneur is it's kind of a lonely place. I mean, you have your friends that were in your world of business and working, but when you're out and you're trying to create something and there's all this, it's humbling to have friends that are in that same position or maybe even a little bit ahead of you that can help mentor you through where you are. And that is exactly what I met and who I met in that program. That just deeply, I'm so grateful for the mentors that were there, and the program managers are wonderful, but then also meeting female founders that are truly friends. And I think that they'll be friends for life, just either one step ahead or one step behind. And it's just a good group of people that you can talk to and say, how did you get through this?
Was that in person?
Mm-hmm. We had 1 week a month in person. Yep.
So you just flew down there once a month?
I did, yeah.
And then the rest of it was on Zoom calls or something?
We had some on Zoom calls, but mostly it was just 1 week a month that we were in person.
And how, so meeting in person, so after living life in Zoom for 2 years and then going to meeting in something in person, how was that? What, was it great to see people face to face and really establish those bonds, or was it like, I can do this on Zoom and get the same thing? What was your take on that?
Being in person. I mean, look, Zoom has its place, but I don't believe any relationships are created on Zoom. I think relationships happen from, physically being around people and feeling the energy. And so to the point that, going back to 1 Million Cups, like being a part of 1 Million Cups on Zoom for a year, I helped the organizers in Loudoun County get it launched back in person in September, because I was like, this business doesn't happen on Zoom. It really doesn't.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So,
I was at a networking thing earlier this week, and it was so bizarre because I saw everybody. I knew everyone in the room, but only from Zoom. And so it's like, for many of these people, it was the first time that I ever saw them in person. And so it was like, gosh, I'm looking at, here I am virtually in person, virtually looking to like scroll over to look at the bottom left corner of this frame that I have of them to see what their name is. Cause I'm like, I know who you are. I've seen you and I've been on many, many calls with you, but I don't know who you are. I cannot remember your name. We didn't have that interaction. It was just bonkers. It was so weird.
So you have to remember someone's name now. There you go.
Well, just in the sense of
welcome back to 2019.
But it's so different when we're looking at people in these little squares to then see people, in the flesh. It was just, it was weird, and it was weird for other people because, like, I ran into people that there's 3 or 4 different people that we've had on previous shows, Zach, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I mean, like they didn't recognize me," and I was
Where were you? Where were you?
It was I can't remember the name of the place, but I was in the Neon District down in Norfolk.
Was there an event or what?
Yeah, it was 757 Accelerate mentor celebration.
Yeah, I think you're seeing it come back. I mean, I think we're sort of in that where people, that are interested in connecting in person will connect in person, and those that aren't quite ready will still, be in that digital zone. But so that's, sort of a challenge for really growing a business right now and trying to bridge both of those areas. But, I think fortunately, if you can get into a group of people that value that in-person connection, then, you're all on the same page.
Yeah, it is interesting too. I mean, I figured it was in person in Florida. It just seems everything's
wide. Yeah, right. Yeah, they're like, what is a mask? I don't know. Yeah, yeah. So, but
no comment.
I mean, we took risks and we did wear masks, and people did have exposure, and so I mean, we all just. It is what it is right now, I think, of our reality. So and
it's not March 6th of 2020. It's different, right? And I think people forget that oftentimes in this scenario. It's like, hey, like things are very different than they were, very early on in the pandemic than they are now, and that means things can, potentially go back to a more normalcy aspect of that. What's something that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Well, I saw, Zach, that you have a puppy. And so I wanted to talk about if you've related raising a puppy. I think there is a correlation there.
A correlation between what?
The raising a puppy to starting a business.
I mean, maybe.
But they both need a lot of attention.
That's for sure. Right? They're just crazy. They don't know anything.
So this is our second puppy in a year and a half. This one, I think our first dog has helped a lot. So I think our first dog helped her a lot more in the process, where I didn't have to do as much. So I would have agreed with you a year ago
Yeah.
But I think dog 2 might have made it a little bit easier, or maybe I learned more from that process. I mean, I think everything, if you really think about it, everything, there's a lot of parallels between so many things. Yeah, she's getting a lot of my attention. Yeah, I guess I'm not sleeping the same way. Yeah, I'm having to change and shift things to do it the way. But I hadn't thought about it from the business aspect. But
yeah, but I guess in the sense of with Beta, you already had that schedule. So and dogs just love routines, and it's like, you take them off the routine and they lose their mind.
And there's 3 people in this house. One of them is a dog that are like completely off that schedule, and there's one that's like, yeah, we're gonna do whatever we want. And it's like, yeah, I got woke up at 4:45 today, which normally is fine because I'll go to the gym at that point. But no, I can't go to the gym because I have to go and babysit the little puppy who wants to do whatever she wants to do at 4:45 in the morning, which is fine. But it's just different. Got to teach her a different way, got to follow the path, if you will.
So Tori, and with highs being really high and lows being really low in the entrepreneurial world, when you experience that low, what do you do to pick yourself up? Do you head over to the stables and hang out and get some?
Yeah. I think the benefit of having the therapist as your horse, go for a ride. I'm outdoorsy, and so I really enjoy being outside skiing and hiking, and depending on the time. And I have a dog, and so I find it really, really important to sort of, there's no such thing as balance in my world. Like, I think you just go with the flow and try to find a place that you can maintain your sanity. And so the walking the dog, playing with the dog, riding the horse, something outdoors. Yeah,
there is something about being outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely something about being outside,
being connected to the earth. I'm a big believer in how water and earth are really meaningful.
If someone's listening and they might be BarnWiz, what are you looking for currently? What's what's on the horizon? What is something that kind of the 1 million cups question, like what can we do for you type of thing? Like, how would you answer that question? I
always love to talk to anyone that's interested in what BarnWiz is doing, and how we're helping to modernize the horse industry. You can find me on our website or through social media. But happy to talk to anyone, help us, validate for us.
And you're hiring, you said you were looking for a full stack developer.
Yeah.
Any other positions that you're looking to fill?
I always look for anyone that's interested in working for a company like ours. So while we have open positions for interested in working for us, like, let's talk about what you do.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, it has been absolutely, I'd love to insert some sort of horse vernacular here, but I can't think of anything. And the one thing that I'm thinking of, I'm not going to do with the video on. So I'm, like twirling the, being a cowboy.
Yeah. We have a horse head mask around here somewhere in this house that I'm sure it's not too far away, but I was like, man, that might be just a little bit too much.
No, you should have started the show like that. That would have been great. We wouldn't have to talk about t-shirts. Could have been talking about the horse head. So, Tori, it's been great. Looking forward to watching your journey, and thanks for being here, Tim. See you soon.
Tori, thanks so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Peace.